everyone. Welcome to today's Different Gaming Appetizers. And what are we talking about tonight? Well, this is really not a news article in a sense. I mean, I guess it is in a way, but kind of a rant, kind of a cool, but what the hell type of thing. So Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out with its 2.0 update. I think the update's already out. And it basically completely overhauls many of the aspects of the game. Like the patch notes for 2.0 are like gigantic. Everything from combat to vehicle combat to AI combat to perks and skills to cyberware to weapons to vehicles to balance and economy to audio to graphics to quests to stability to performance to all sorts of crap is just being updated. And, from my understanding, I haven't tried the 2.0 update, but from the initial launch of the game to this is like, night and day. Like this is what the game should have been on release, right? Version 2.0 completely overhauls many aspects of the game's core mechanics. And as such, developer CD Projekt recommends that PC players should uninstall any mods for the game until they can be updated to support the changes. Because the changes are to crucial game systems are extensive, we strongly recommend uninstalling pre-2.0 mods until the modding community has a chance to update them, the studio says. Outdated mods could disrupt the experience in many ways and in some situations may cause critical errors. So, great. And then we have Phantom Liberty, which is coming out here soon. Which the reviews for that have gotten like 9s and 10s or 9s at least, like across the board. Like everyone's like, this is amazing. Here's my problem with this. I don't really have a problem with Cyberpunk as a game, but I have a problem with it releasing. It released back in December of 10th of 2020. And if you're like me, I played it back then. I beat it back then. And the game, while it was fun, I could see the potential. It was almost like early access, right? It had so many bugs and jankiness and just a lot of issues with the game, right? And that was the biggest hubbub around the whole gaming community, was the fact that the game, everyone was excited for a next CD Projekt game and it was a total disaster. Now, 3 years later, or almost 3 years later, right? It's the game that it should have been. Well, why wasn't it the game that it should have been almost 3 years ago when it released? I can understand if Cyberpunk 2077 came out in early access, right? If it came out and said this is early access and the game was buggy and like it was and everything like that, then I could say, okay, well, it's early access, so, whatever. And then 2.0, when that came out just here recently, they said this is the full launch of the game, 2.0. Then, like Baldur's Gate came out early access. I didn't pick up Baldur's Gate until it released. And when it released, and then it, came out to consoles, it came out to PlayStation here, or it's already out on PlayStation or coming out soon here to PlayStation, and then it's coming out to Xbox sometime this year. That game's great. It probably wasn't like perfect when it was in early access at the beginning, when they first started early access. But when it got to its actual release, they got everything worked out and it was fantastic. And so it seems like Cyberpunk should have been that way, because Cyberpunk, I think, was a $70 game when it released, full price title. And it's just now that even the studio, I read something today that the studio said this was how the game was supposed to be. So even the studio is saying like, hey, forget the game that you played almost 3 years ago. You should play this one because this one's much better. And even reviewers and critics out there are saying, yeah, this is like, again, like night and day. It's a completely different game. It's what it should have been, right? Like the Cyberpunk 2077 that came out in 2020 was a concept, right? And this is the full feature of that concept, right? Is what they have here with 2.0. So my main thing is like games. Cyberpunk's not the first one. This seems like a trend going out there. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of early access either, but if you put your game in early access with a dedicated roadmap, see, that's the thing about putting your game in early access as well. Baldur's Gate did this, right? When Baldur's Gate put their game in early access, they had a roadmap that they stuck to. Sure, they might have, there might have been times where the roadmap may have deviated, but they basically stuck to the roadmap and said, this is what you could expect as the game continues to progress. And that's great. That means they have an idea. They already have a structure set out on how and what's going to happen and if you want to invest in that game, usually early access is cheaper. In this case, it wasn't for Baldur's Gate, but usually it is. Then you can say, okay, as the game develops, I can help with my input and bug fixes and things like that. As a gamer, I can buy in and I can play the game or play snippets of the game, because certain parts may not be done yet. And then I can tell them, hey, these are the things you need to do. And if Cyberpunk would have came out in early access, that would have been fine. If now 2.0 is the official date, now it's coming out of early access and now it's coming out to consoles at the same time, everything like that, then you'd be like, okay, cool. Because most people would be playing it now, but most people are marred by the experience they had, including myself, where I do want to check out 2.0 and I do want to check out Phantom Liberty, but I'm also at the same time going, well, I've already played through and beaten this game. I did all the side quests and everything at the time, right? And there's probably more now, but at the time I did everything. So do I want to go back and do it all again? I don't know. I probably will, but it's just the aspect of these games coming out that clearly aren't ready to come out. Like, and Cyberpunk's not the only one. It's really annoying seeing all these titles come out there and clearly they weren't ready for the limelight, right? And I don't know if clearly it's the publisher or shareholders or somebody that's saying this game needs to come out regardless of its state. Redfall is a good, Redfall has other issues, but that was a good thing with one of the things with Redfall as well, right? Redfall should have just been canceled altogether, clearly, except for Microsoft wanting to release it, which they shouldn't have released it, right? It just put a bad mark on Xbox. I think they should just cancel that game. I don't think Cyberpunk should have been canceled, but I think they should have been delayed till they had what clearly they have with 2.0. But let's go to Shane and see what Shane thinks about all this. Shane, what do you think of Cyberpunk coming out with 2.0? Are you going to play Cyberpunk again? And what do you think of these games doing crap like this?
Yes, I will play it again. Primarily because the original game was so goddamn broken. It was basically unplayable when it first released. You have more patience than I do, and you played through the clunky and the broken and the glitched and all that. I mean, I had a cop stuck in the hood of my car for like 2 hours. Granted, it was funny at first because it made a hell of a screenshot, but the game was bad. The game was broken. Now is the game that I wanted to play. But I've also still got a bad taste in my mouth from that. As a man who doesn't have much money, because I have many bills, because I have too damn many children and too damn many wife. Yes, it's one wife, but she feels like a lot. So I don't have a lot of money. So when I buy a game, I don't want to buy something that's broken. And I have to disagree with you about the early access. I'm very anti early access. To me, early access is beta testing, forcing people to pay you to beta test your stuff. Now, granted, I'd like a game that's working when it's released. I like that, but I don't like early access because of that. They should do it themselves. They should look and play their own crap and go, yeah, we can't release this. The game is clearly broken when they released it. They knew it was broken. There's no qualms. There's no bullshit. Oh my God, I'm as surprised as you are. No, you're not. And and I've said this 1,000 times, the biggest problem with the gaming industry is money. It is stockholders. That is the biggest problem with the gaming industry. That's the biggest problem with really just economy, is shareholders and the con that is. This game now is what we should have gotten. This game now is also a heavy representative of what is wrong with the gaming industry. And it's not the only one. So it's not to knock on CD Projekt Red at all. CD Projekt Red, as a developer, they're fantastic. Unfortunately, I don't think they were fully in control of their development of this game. I think stockholders, people obedient to stockholders and things like that were forcing this game to go out when it wasn't done cooking. And happens all the time. I understand deadlines and things like that. I mean, I believe we both deal with deadlines all the time in our work. But if it's not done, it's not done. If you can't help it, you can't help it. I mean, the CD Projekt Red, the game that they envisioned and they created, is astonishing. Now, what they were going for is fantastic, but they weren't ready to release it because a game like this takes too much time. Takes a lot of time. That's why it's been 3 years since release. We're getting the game that we really wanted. That means the 3 years since release plus the development time of probably 7 years. I can't remember how long it was. So, you have to Google me. That's 10 years of them working on one game and to give us the game we really wanted. Redfall should have either been just completely flushed or put back in the oven and possibly redone or reimagined, because Redfall really wasn't a bad game. It was just badly done, because you could see where you could have fun, because we had fun ish because we were together. But there were so many things that just didn't work right with that game. It was broken and all that stuff. So that is just another example of, not prioritizing quality over cash. That's it. I mean, I understand the, gaming industry, you're not going to make games for free. You're not going to do it without the ideal and prospect of making money, because why would you do it? I mean, you're going to starve to death, plain and simple. So, but if you've got the money to take another 6 months to tweak, fine tune, throw it back in the oven and bake that cookie a little bit longer, you need to do it, plain and simple. Nintendo, even Sony, on their original consoles, original games, we didn't have these problems because they knew then you couldn't just release a patch. They knew they had to have a game that worked. And granted, you still had a few glitchy things here and there, but hardly ever did you get something broken. Now, it's hardly ever do you get something that works. Baldur's Gate pissed a lot of people's off. Number 3, Baldur's Gate 3 pissed a lot of people's off because it was released working properly. It still had a few, little bugs here and there. Very, very few. But a game of that scale, of that size, of that quality, releasing as well as it did, and then other developers coming out bitching about it because it was released working and released with quality, that shows you what is wrong with the gaming industry. CD Projekt Red was one of the biggest games to come out 3 years ago. It was probably the biggest game, and it's broke. It's busted. It was jacked up. It was I mean, it was the Charlie Sheen of video games. I mean, it was supposed to be tiger's blood, but it was just turned out to be AIDS. So we need to put a stop to the gaming industry for this kind of stuff, plain and simple. We need, honestly, I think this should be a law that you cannot release a game that bad, that busted. Plain and simple. I mean, it's terrible. It's absolutely a terrible thing to do. But the good news is, though, CD Projekt Red has been working on it, fixing it, making it better. Unlike EA, they didn't just screw it, flush it, we're done. They've made the game that they wanted to make. Now, it's too late for a lot of players. A lot of players don't want to go back. They felt burnt, and fully understand it. No, don't blame them. But I thank the company for continuing to try to make it. Only one other company, developer, I think, ever tried anything like this and then fixed it over time was what's the other flight, the Planet game there, Nick? It was a PlayStation exclusive there.
No Man's Sky?
No Man's Sky. Yeah. So they released a game that wasn't right. It wasn't the game that was promised. It wasn't the game that people expected, but they made it that game. They continued, but they also had people supporting them. So,
I mean, yeah. And Cyberpunk has the same thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
You could say the same thing for, I mean, the difference between No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk is that Cyberpunk was, well, there's not really a big difference. They were an
established studio. We got to give it that.
Well, yeah. I mean, Cyberpunk was. You would expect more from that, but No Man's Sky was a altogether package. It just was missing a lot of things that they promised. Right now, it has it. Now it has all those things plus more. Whereas Cyberpunk was, well, it wasn't everything they promised either, right? And broken and messed up. According to online, I don't know if it's true or not, but it seemed like Cyberpunk development, some scale of development began in 2013. They were saying with a small team, so that was probably like planning and stuff like that. It's probably a few years before actual like full scale, like huge group, huge amount of developers and things like that started to actually
kind
make
of concept time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So 2013 might have been like concept and kind of ideals and things like that, storyboarding and various things like that to kind of get an idea of what they wanted to do. Which is a long time. That'd be 10 years, right? All in all, but that's not 10 years of development. That's 10 years of thinking about it, outlining things, then going into like probably small development, then larger development and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, now it'd be 10 years. So it's just, it's not really, I mean, luckily this 2.0 update is free. So if you already own Cyberpunk 2077, you can go and download, you'll patch up to this update, the 2.0 update, and then you get all these. So that's a good thing. You don't have to rebuy the game, or you don't have to go buy the super awesome edition to get this, or, like some studios do where they like to re-release the game as, Cyberpunk 2077 plus, and it's like that one actually has the update where the other one doesn't. They didn't do anything like that. It's just a free update. And then Phantom Liberty is not free, but it's an expansion, right? And that one, I think it's like $30 or it might be $40. I can't remember. But that's cool. And I'm glad Cyberpunk got to the point where it is now, where it's fully, at the point where CD Projekt really wanted the game to be, right? And I'm happy for that they were able to get there with it. And so it's not really too much of a dig so much on Cyberpunk as it is just the gaming development as a whole, releasing these titles that are half broken and half, not working or missing features, things promised that don't, Halo Infinite was one of those as well that, I mean, there's a lot of games that, especially recently in the last few years, that have, come out and been total crap shows and just, but the problem is too, and Shane said this before we got on here, problem is too, is us, right? We go out and we buy them. And then we go online and we complain. We make videos, YouTube like this, and we complain. Yet we own a copy of it. All of us do. Right? And then the next one comes out and it's broken to shit. But we still go and pay $70 for it. And then go, why is this so bad? Well, we're not helping the situation if we're going to go out and buy it. Right? And that goes along not just with us, but everybody else in the game community that does argue about these bad games, but still goes out, pre-orders them or purchases them day one from a digital store or from a GameStop or whatever. Right. So we're part of the problem.
We need to be part of the solution. The gaming industry is kind of like the Resident Evil movie franchise. It gets worse, but we still watch. We still give them our money and we watch. And I don't know why we do it. I have a game addiction. I know that. I don't have faith or hope in people. So I know when I'm going to get burnt, but I still do it. And I've got to stop. Our wallets have got to stop this incessive need to release busted ass games. And then when the games are broken and they're not where they should be, the publishers blame the developers. And like EA recently is canceling Wild Hearts, which is a damn good game. But it's EA's fault that the game didn't hit marks, most likely because it's EA. Certain games, Anthem is a great example. Anthem was a game that was developed by a solid developer, fantastic developer. It was a game that had a really, in my opinion, and still today, a fantastic concept, great controls, great gameplay. Really, the game was fantastic, except for there was one big problem that game had. It was done in 20 minutes and there was nothing to do afterwards. Literally, that's it. Once you beat the game, all the side missions and stuff, there was just nothing there to do. That game shouldn't have been released like that. That game should have had a lot more going for it because they had everything they needed. They just didn't give them the time and the money to probably do.
There was no meat with those potatoes.
No, exactly. It was an all meat eat diet. It was all vegetarian.
All potatoes.
It was all vegetarian.
All potatoes.
Yeah. I need some proteins.
No meat.
But CD Projekt Red is not the problem with the game industry. It's just an example of what's wrong, and the biggest problem.
The game industry is the
biggest problem.
Industry.
Yeah, the biggest problem with you is you. The game industry. The two main problems with the gaming industry is money in the form of investors and things like that, and dumbasses like us who still buy those things. Plain and simple. I have retro collection back here that has better quality than most games released in the last 10 years, as far as completion, performance. So CD Projekt Red, good for you for sticking with it, giving us the game we wanted to begin with. Unfortunately, it's going to be too late for many people. The DLC for Phantom Liberty is $30. I will consider picking that up once I complete the game. I will have to restart the game because I don't want to try to remember, because I was 30 plus hours in. I did a lot. Don't get me wrong. It's just a game like this is just so massive and there's so much to do. That's without the Phantom Liberty DLC. So I like that they kept going. I just hate that it just took them 3 years too long to make the game that I wanted. So, but
Yep.
shame on the gaming industry for making them put that game out.
For shame. Yeah,
For
I
me,
agree. I'll probably end up playing Cyberpunk 2077 again. But I mean, I beat the game, but I'll probably start over because I want to experience everything from the beginning, especially since this is how it's supposed to be, right? And the 2.0 update has a ton. I mean, the patch notes is like humongous. So there's a ton of changes in it. And so, I want to be able to experience the game from the start and going through it again, right? Than what I did. So I'll probably play it again in Phantom Liberty. I'll probably play because it looks pretty good and it's getting good reviews. You're exactly right. It just sucks that more and more games seem to come out broken and either broken and crappy and they never get fixed, or you have developers like CD Projekt and some others that have brought out broken or troubled games and brought them back, from the ashes to become great games, right? It just sucks that a game has to come out in that state and then be brought back from the dead, right? Instead of coming out shining, like they should be. So, you got anything else you want to add to this?
No. That sounds shallow, but the initial appearance makes and breaks pretty much anything that you're trying to sell.
Yeah.
So whether it be a video game to a car, to a hooker, first impressions.
First impressions.
That's the way it is.
That's what it counts. If you can't make that first impression, and like us, we'll probably play Cyberpunk again. I mean, I'm sure all three of us, me, you, and Pat, will probably play through it again. With all these, I know Pat's been talking about it recently too, so it sounds like he wants to play through it again, and I'm sure I will, and I'm sure Shane will. But you will have a lot of those people, unfortunately, that were burnt from the first experience and probably will never touch it again, right? And they might be missing out on a great game that it is now, but like you said, first impressions, that's what counts. And if you make a bad first impression, it might be hard for people to come back. So you got to watch what you do. But anything else, Shane?
Nope. Just stop releasing broken ass shit.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notifications, stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. And let us know down in the comments below, did you play Cyberpunk 2077 when it came out back in 2020? And if so, have you touched it since then? Have you played the new 2.0 update? Are you planning on playing 2.0 update as well as Phantom Liberty when it comes out here soon? Let us know down in the comments below. Other than that, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
See ya.